Everybody, welcome to Film.Music.Media. My name is Kai Savas, and I'm sitting down with a good friend of mine, Tim Wynn. Tim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Kai. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. I know we've done, I think, 4 or 5 interviews over the past like 7 years or whatever. I remember back when I was just doing them on Skype, and you were one of the first people that were so nice to come on and talk about your work. So I'm so glad that we get to reconnect and talk about Midnight Suns and some new projects and stuff like that. So, but to start off, I've been asking this new question to composers that I love getting the responses back. So I don't think I've asked you this one yet. And so you can take it as a simple question, but probably a very complicated question. As a human being, as an artist, as a storyteller, as a musician, as a composer, what does music mean to you?
Well, yeah, that's a big question. I mean, for me, it kind of just it means everything. And I know that's kind of it's kind of a cop out sort of thing, but it like as a media composer, I'm always working. I'm always thinking about music. If I watch a movie, I'm thinking. I can't really. I'm analyzing it as the whole way through. So for me, music is a part of my body, just as my two arms are, my two legs, and everything. It's just like an extra sense. It's just it really is that integral to how I see the world.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, it's the way you communicate, it's the way you express yourself,
Right.
and you've turned that into a career. So I'm curious. I know we talked about this in the past, I'm sure, but for anybody who's new to discovering you or meeting you, what was the catalyst? Do you remember the point in your life where it went from like, oh, this is something I'm interested in, to like, no, this is something that I want to do for the rest of my life. This is something that I want to build a career. Do you remember? Was there a point, or did it just happen gradually over time, and you're like, okay, I'm in this now? Or was it like, was there some intervention of like a person or something you saw that just was like, nope, that's it? So I don't know, I'm curious.
I mean, I don't know if it was like a bolt out of the sky that did it, but I definitely remember always writing music from when I couldn't play the piano or anything like that. But there was always melodies and music going around in my head. And I was, in my early days, I was always into sports and doing that sort of thing like that. But music was something that always I was thinking about, even while I was participating in sports. And then playing air guitar, I was always thinking about trying to be a rock and roll star or something like that. And I think it was right before high school that I really realized that I need to stop doing everything else and just focus on music, because that is something that I wanted to do. And so I got, I'd been taking guitar lessons and learning piano myself, by myself, this whole time. So I think it was before high school. I really knew that was the career goal I was going to do. And so in high school, I loved doing sports too. So I continued with that because I just couldn't help
Yeah.
myself. But I started getting into choirs and getting more involved with the composition and theory, the actual nuts and bolts of it, not just the songwriting part of it. So I mean, it happened gradually, but at the same time, I think around 12 years old, I was pretty focused on, like, yes, I am going to do something in music. At that time, it wasn't,
Yeah.
I'm going to, be a film composer. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with that creative energy, but it was definitely that the focus was before high school that was going to be my career path.
And do you remember what put you into like like media composition? Was it something specific there? Because you could have gone, music is such a wide thing. I know a lot of
Yeah.
composers who were like, I'm in bands and I thought I was gonna be a rock star, and then the quiet life in the studio seemed more my speed. So I'm curious, what was the appeal of writing to picture and telling stories that way?
Well, I mean, I think you said some of it where you thought you're going to be a rock star, and then you got tired of waiting for the drummer to show up all the time. It's always a drummer's being late. Sorry, drummers, but you guys got to clean your stuff up. But so I mean, I felt that way a little bit, but at the same time, I had mentors in high school that saw me what I was doing and said, "Hey, this other avenue of scoring, or using your musical talents this way." And so I remember really starting my classical journey in high school, where I think the gateway drug for any of us film composer was Gustav Holst's The Planets.
Mm,
And if you're familiar with it or not, but it's
yeah.
just really, you watch it and you're like, oh my God, I've seen all this score, being used for all these movies, for so many years. And it was like kind of I think that would be a light bulb moment for me, if I had it, that it was like, oh, that's where this music derives from. This is where John Williams is using it, and things like that. So it felt like that was like, at the same time I was still doing the songwriting, doing the sort of pseudo rock and roll stuff.
Yeah.
But that part was, I was building that part of my music vocabulary up there. And then when I finally could express it, maybe a little bit later in college, when I was writing, piano sonatas and string quartets and things like that, that I felt more comfortable, being in that arena.
Absolutely. And I want to I want to jump into, I mean, your career has been so great because it's so versatile. You've done film and TV and video games, and we're about to talk about video games. But that versatility, you haven't like boxed yourself into a certain type of medium. But I want to focus on video games before we jump into some of your projects. I just want to maybe talk about the industry in general, because not just the film industry and TV industry is seeing this seismic shift that we're going through in the industry, but so is the game industry. We're seeing similar mergers and things. Do you see any parallels of how the video game industry is shaping into the future to what film and TV is going through, or do you think it's completely different in what's happening right now?
Well, no, I mean, I think you said it. It's a shifting sands with
Yeah.
the all the streaming avenues. Everything is becoming so segmented that, in the old days, I used to think that I knew what it meant to be famous or infamous or whatever it was, that the
Right.
projects that you were working on, like that was part of the zeitgeist, that everyone kind of did it. But it's now. I now can say, well, yeah, I worked on Supernatural for 15 seasons.
Yeah.
And some people are like, oh my God, that's amazing. And some people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. So it is really, I've really figured out that everything is so segmented that even especially in the games industry, it's like some people have heard about the games that I've done, even though they're all AAA, and some people haven't. And so
Right.
it is a unique thing. So I almost feel like everyone is in there, a million different lanes, and
Yeah.
all you can do is work on the projects that you can work on, and enjoy it, and worry
Yeah.
about how that all, society and everything else sorts it all out. And you just try to focus on what you can control, which is writing the best music you can for every opportunity you can.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think a lot of people, especially with all the at least studio mergers, a lot of anger and frustration, which I get, but it's like also I think we have to adapt as well as everything around us changes. And I'm
Yeah,
going through it too. I mean, I work at Cartoon Network Studios, the merger with
right.
Discovery, but I think it's it's tough, but also we're prepping for the future and always changing. You have to always adapt, and I think um as part of if you're in a creative role, yeah, you just go with the flow and just do your best work, but you got to
I
adapt
mean,
too. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. I mean, some people, you talk Discovery, it's like, well, some people might think Deadliest Catch is the best show on TV and watch it all the time. It's very popular, but a lot of people are going to be like, well, The Crown is my favorite. So,
Right.
you're for me, like you said, my career, it's been kind of all over the map, and it's been great that way,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I haven't been typecast into any one segment where it's like, oh, he's that guy, he's that guy. Well, I've done a lot of sort of a shotgun approach, and for me, that's helped me continue to be creative, because I'm not doing the same thing over and over again for 35 years, or how, not 35 years, I haven't been doing that long, but for a long time. And it's not, I'm doing, oh, all right, the same action movie over and over and over and over and over again. So for me, it's helped me stay creative and be fresh, and just go to new areas of music.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about a new area of music that you jumped into. Let's talk about Midnight Suns, Marvel's Midnight Suns, which is getting amazing reviews, and you're reteaming with the Fire Axis Games team that you worked with XCOM, and did amazing work with them. And so, before we jump into the game, I want to talk about that composer developer relationship, because you see these kind of these resident sometimes a resident composer will stay with the developer through. I mean, I just interviewed, Grant and Graham from GoldenEye 64, and they were part of the Rare
Yeah.
team, back in the 90s. And then you see someone like Enon, who's with Bethesda, and so talk to me about being a composer and working with a game developer, and how that relationship is, and going from project to project.
Yeah, it's been great. I got brought in to do XCOM and then XCOM 2 and War of the Chosen. So I really felt comfortable with everybody that was working there. We had, similar just ways of working with each other. So it felt really good. And as a composer, especially a media composer, you're used to kind of being in your own box and working by yourself for your own thing. So then integrating with a bigger company like Firaxis and you become part of the team. So that part feels really good. That you're not just working with one or two people. I mean, for a game, here we already talked about the music, but
Right.
If it wasn't for the producers of everybody part of this huge company doing all amazing stuff from artwork to it's all collaborative, and I'm so thankful to be part of their team, just being able to express in music what they're looking for in a game. So
yeah. So let's talk about what they were looking for with Midnight Suns. You're doing this amazing, massive, 60 to 70 hour RPG, turn-based combat, Marvel, inspired, with characters, and a huge ensemble with every, known character that everyone loves. So what were the initial conversations about this game, and what kind of music were they looking for, and what did you want to bring to this project?
Well, it started with that we're going to do something that is in the Marvel universe, right? The music needs to sound like it comes from it. So from the very beginning, we weren't like, all right, let's deconstruct everything and start from a blank page. It didn't make any sense to do that. So we knew it had to be part of the Marvel tree. So, but we wanted to create like a new branch of the Marvel tree of music, so it would have its own unique character. So that's kind of where it started. And we used some of the inspiration from the Midnight Suns comic books being from the 1990s.
Yeah.
So we tried to use that as like, sort of a point of a reference, like what sort of action scores from those movies that we can kind of draw from. So I was looking into it, and I actually forgot that I was thinking about Alan Silvestri's great scores for the Predator series.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it was great scores, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I love it. And so I was trying to think of like that 90s action movie type vibe, but then I kind of forgot that actually placed at the end of the 80s. So
Yeah, that was like 87.
it was 80. Yeah, but I didn't really think of it. I guess I thought about it in the 90s so much. And James Newton Howard's The Fugitive, James Horner, Wrath of Khan, but that was definitely in the 80s, early 80s.
Right.
So those were some of the things that, like, all right, can I use some inspiration from some of those scores and sprinkle in some Marvel and a little bit of guitar, and that's basically what the sound ended up being for Midnight Suns.
So, and you also worked with you co-composed with Phill Boucher, who is a fantastic composer, and he's but gaming is also unique sometimes. And I also do want to talk about Total War too, which was a big team of composers. So we'll get to that one. But so how did you and Phil work? Do you guys work separately, or did you guys work together at all?
We worked a little bit together, but I would say it was mostly separately. At the very beginning, we delineated where Phil was going to do all the interactive, and I was going to do all the themes and all the cutscenes and things like that. So I didn't know it at the time of how much music it was going to take. Sometimes when you're working on a game project, you're on a need to know basis, and
Right.
And some of the outside people that you're not in it every day like they are. I mean, you're working on your part of the thing, but you sometimes don't get to see the overall picture. So now that I'm past it, and now I'm looking back, and it was basically like writing a trilogy. What I was doing, like for movies. So it almost felt like I was writing Lord of the Rings, because it does happen, and Midnight Suns happens in 3 acts, but it feels like like 3 separate movies, and
Right.
it's about that much music, 3 hours of music. So, you know, we worked on at the very beginning, just like what we were going to do. And then he could see if any themes that would come up that he could integrate into his score. But yeah, Phil was great. And I'm so happy that they were wise enough at the very beginning to have 2 composers start. Cause I mean, most of the projects I work on nowadays are
Yeah.
multiple composers, because there is so much music. The games are so huge, and so it really worked well, having us do, you know, the way it worked out. So
Yeah, and I mean, because yeah, that this game is a beast of a game, and there's a lot going on. There's a big ensemble cast, and of course it has, you know, the combat stuff. It has a lot of exploration. It has a lot of dialogue, kind of similar to what people might see in like Mass Effect, like really building relationships and like decisions that the player is going to make. So, and you mentioned about composing a trilogy, but were you able to like envision that structure at the start, or did it kind of take shape as the project moved along?
yeah, well, as a little bit different than Howard Shore, if I'm using the analogy for Lord of the Rings, where he was
Right.
able to see the full movie. So they didn't have the cutscenes completely then, so it was kind of developing
Right.
as we went. So we didn't know like how we were going to treat the themes for the characters. We knew that there was going to be a Midnight Suns theme. We knew there was going to be the bad guy, which is Lilith, in this, so she was going to have a theme as well. After that, we didn't really, you know, figure who's going to have the themes, and so it kind of took to about the 4th or 5th cutscene, and then Chris Stoller and Chad Rocco at Firaxis said, "Well, we need a theme for the Bruce Banner." Who was being Bruce Banner at the time. You know, eventually he'll turn into Hulk when he's angry, you
Right.
know, of course. So I was a little bit curious, because he really wasn't doing anything in that scene. So it was just like he was just sitting there talking. I'm like, well, you know, the Jerry Goldsmith in me and the Elmer Bernstein that, you know, I went to and learned from at school would say, well, what's the motivation? Why were we playing the theme? But they asked for a
Right.
theme. I'm like, okay, well, here's a theme. And I didn't really, at that point, I didn't really realize that decision was going to evolve us into everyone having their own theme from then on, to help, you know, really help tell the story. And I'm thankful that it did, because I didn't have the whole, like, I couldn't map out everything. Oh, let's like,
Yeah.
this is where the Hulk's theme is going to be here, be there, and how it's all going to work out. So that was the challenging part of it, and also the rewarding part of it, doing it, because it really was, having these themes evolve, change, do different things and different cutscenes, you know, really made it, you know, very rewarding for me.
Absolutely. I mean, so yeah, you got to do like an ensemble kind of theme, and then for Midnight Suns, and then pick apart those
Yeah.
characters, and then watch that develop. Did you like, you know, I was on a panel talking about how one composer was like, oh yeah, I wrote this amazing theme as the start, and didn't realize down the road I made it so chromatic that it was so hard to make it sad or exciting or something like that. Did you ever run into issues where like, oh, this theme works great for that intro scene where he's just sitting there, but then if he had to
Yeah.
be bigger or something, or smaller, was there any you know, challenges of adapting that theme and variations throughout, like, or any of the themes?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. What the composer said was, and that's, I've done that trap before. So when I've tried to write a main theme, I have sat there and thought, okay, how are other ways that I can integrate this? You know, if
Yeah.
it's going to be happy, it's going to be sad. This, you know, any of the emotions, how can I do it? So usually when I write a main theme, I go over it briefly. I can, of course, you know, I don't have the time to like write every
Right.
single permutation of the
Yeah.
theme, but I definitely have that in the back of my mind, and especially if it's very chromatic, like you said,
Mm.
because that makes changing chords over it very difficult. So you have to kind of think about that ahead of time. With the theme that I mentioned for Bruce Banner, I didn't really think about it as much. I didn't have time, because I didn't think
Yeah.
at a moment I'm like, oh, I'll just write a little motif, and I did, and I wasn't thinking how it was going to work out. So that it worked out as well as it did. It
Yeah.
really feels, you know, like it feels good, because I mean, I didn't do the super chromatic thing, but it was, you know, Bruce has his dark moments. He has his he's really, I don't want to give away all the spoilers, but of what
Right,
for
right, right.
Midnight, but you'll figure it out. But yeah, being able to use that theme in as many places that I was able to, I'm really happy it worked out that way. So maybe it was just by happenstance or whatever that I knew not to write it like 12 tone, stuff underneath it. But yeah, it worked out really good.
Yeah. So take me behind like what the timeline is. Like, with a game, it can, go into years and years of development. It can be years and years of production. And now we're seeing this kind of a new trend where, developers are under this immense pressure of trying to get a game out. Then of course gets delayed, and because everyone needs to make certain dates and announcements and stuff like that. And it becomes almost common where, the date gets pushed and pushed. I'm curious what the timeline on this game was like, and how often as a composer, because I know I've talked to like Jason Graves where he'll be like, oh yeah, every few months you'd come in and do something, then you don't hear back, and then you come back and you add some more. And so I'm curious what the process is like on a game in general, maybe not just Midnight Suns, but in general, like how long are you on it from start to finish, and not necessarily how much music and work you're doing, but like from getting hired to when it's fully delivered.
Right. Well, I mean, it varies from game to game that I've worked on. For XCOM, I think I started in March and I had 6 months to do it.
Oh wow.
So it was a lot of, really, really quick sort of action, just kind of
Mm.
like, kind of like a movie or anything, other projects I've worked on. For Midnight Suns, it was a much longer development. And we also had something in between during that development, and it was called COVID. So
Yep.
there was a little bit, yeah. So a little bit of issues with that as well. So, I mean, we knew we were going to make this huge, game, and it was going to be massive. And I think the guys in Firaxis they were evolving everything as I started going. We knew we were going to do
Yeah.
the movies. We ought to do it. So there was a little bit of change. It wasn't, I don't think, planned out exactly the way they wanted to. Anytime that Jake Solomon or Garth DeAngelis, they like, hey, what if we did this? What if we did that? I think they keep on trying to make the game better, better, and better and better. So as the minutes got longer, and we just kept on adding things to
Yeah.
it. So that's the thing I think I love about game development, was they're always trying to improve. For the almost every game I've ever worked on, everyone to the last minute is working hard as they can to make the gameplay better in any way, shape, or form. So if it can make it 2% better, we're going to spend that time, that money, those resources to do it. So when it comes out, that everyone's going to be, thrilled and really happy with it. And especially with those Marvel aspect of it, you just really want to knock it out of the park. And as you said, the reviews are really, through the roof, and everyone's having a good time playing it. And with these games, I think it takes a little bit longer. It's not something like these first-person shooter games where everyone just plays it, in 1 month and then it kind of goes away. So much like XCOM, I go back and play that once a year easily, if not more, because it's so much fun. So that's kind of how I expect Midnight Suns to be. It's just something that's going to last for, a long time. And I'm currently working on the DLCs, and so those are going to be coming out. And people love it's fun to play with your comic book heroes and make characters and interact with them. So I think it's something that's going to last for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I know we were talking before we hit recording just about families and dads and kids, and my friend I told you who had 3 kids, his favorite game is XCOM, and he's like, that's my me time game. So he's like, I got my Switch, and I'm just like between emergencies at home, I'm in XCOM.
Yeah, no, it's fun. And when my kids were little, when I did that, I didn't think they were more into Minecraft. They didn't really think they liked XCOM, but they really loved to make their own characters. So I made, basically my whole family, and that's my squad that goes in there.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
what he
pretty
said. He's like,
hard.
Kaya, you're in here too. We have a whole text group from high school. He's like, I made everybody in here a character in the game.
Yeah, and it's hard. And you come back from a mission and someone's dead.
Yeah.
If it was one of my kids, I went. I'd kind of like rage quit and undo myself. I haven't finished Iron Man, so where you can't. There's no changes. You die, you die. So
Right.
I haven't been brave enough to do that. But yeah, it's fun. I mean, I think I even picked up there was a game when I was young called um, probably no one has heard of it, but it's made by Microprose, if you ever remember that name of that company. But
No, I don't
old,
think so.
really old school, like very beginning of computers, like
Yeah.
time. And it was called F-19 Stealth Fighter, and I saw it on Steam. I'm like, oh, it's $7. I'll, so I open it up, and it's called F-19 Stealth Fighter. They didn't even know that's the wrong, it's F-117. But
Right.
anyway, you had that all wrong, whatever. But but I opened it and played it, and I'm like, oh my god, this is what I played when I was 16. This is, I mean, I still play it. It's fun, but the graphics are awful. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
there's just, it's a fun, they did a amazing job of making a cool game with what they had. But I remembered it like it wasn't this bad, but it was this bad, like just not the game itself, the
The
experience,
controls and the
the
experience.
controls, the
Yeah.
the colors, it's the graphics really that I'm responding to for that. So
Yeah, I'm in the same boat right now because I grew up with GoldenEye. So when they just released it on the
oh yeah.
Switch, and I literally started, I'm like, how did I shoot with what? It's like you're walking around. I'm like remapping my joysticks, like N64. How do we do this one joystick? I don't remember. So it's just like you're just
No,
adapting.
I know. You look at those things, and I one of the games I played early on too was Wolfenstein,
Yeah.
and it's like, I don't even think. I mean, I look at people play it on video or on YouTube and stuff like that. I'm like, oh my god, I don't know how. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
square and so this and that, but it was still, it had its own brilliance, and
Yeah.
same with
Yeah.
GoldenEye. But I don't know if you can ever go home again. But the nostalgia factor of it, just take my money. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
I think these things, once they're in our universe, it's like just keep on going and keep on playing it, and it's so much fun to revisit these things, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love that. Like, yeah, now technology is allowing us to come back not just with remakes, but just ports and just just emulate them online and just play them
Yeah.
as they were rather than redesigning them from the ground up. So I think that's also
Yeah,
a
no,
real fun thing. Yeah.
yeah. No, I think I played a lot of I'm trying to remember Tecmo Bowl
Yeah.
and Super Tecmo Bowl in that game. But so I had a lot of fun playing it, but I don't know if I want to see it remade. I kind of want to play it
Right.
the way I played it when I was in college, and
Exactly.
it has its own, like, it has its quirks, it has its things, but big deal.
Absolutely. Well, I want to jump into another. Let's jump another game that you did last year, Total War Warhammer 3, which is a completely different approach than Midnight Suns was. So, I mean, this is another series of games that you co-composed with Richard Bedow, Jamie Christopherson, and Ian Livingston, Simon Raven, and then yourself. So, talk to me about how different of an approach this was to Midnight Suns, and then you're working on a team of this many composers, and how that differs.
Yeah, well, Richard is the ringleader, and so he
Hmm.
keeps us all, straight and narrow on everything. So, with Warhammer, what's great is it's easily to divide the work up. It's like you work on one race or faction, and you do all the music for that. So,
Okay.
and that also was done during the pandemic. So, it was tricky
Yeah.
when we were having to record live orchestra, because it's one of those that you can't really fake it with. It absolutely needs to have live orchestra. So when we were recording in Prague, I was looking forward to going, but I couldn't go. And
Yeah.
then listening to monitoring the session for a week, got to get up at midnight, and that was the whole thing. But listening to, I was listening to the performers cough and do the, we just had this tiny little window around Thanksgiving after the first year of 2020, and to record, and it was like, I'm like, oh my god, are these people going to make it? And then I had to do choir,
Yeah.
and it's the same thing. I'm hearing all this coughing and this, and I'm talking to the contractor, and he said the only reason why we can do this is because these people have already had COVID. So they already
Wow.
had COVID and recovered from it, and then they were able to do our project. But yeah, but going back to your question, we really work in our own lanes. Richard is the center of it, and he deals with us and me and Ian and Jamie, and we do our own stuff, and sometimes we dabble in each other's factions. If there's Richard's not a masochist, so sometimes if we're doing like all this heavy battle music for
Yeah.
one faction, he'll say, hey, just do some for another faction, and then you have to kind of get up to speed with that. but he lets you kind of create your own sound, and with him, where it's like, all right, what should this sound like? Let's try to make it like this. Let's come up with ideas, and then we kind of ping pong back one another, and just create really really cool fun music.
And is there do you have like a shared folder or something where you can like see what everyone is doing, and so you're not like doing the same thing someone else is, or you guys are all on the same page of what kind of styles, or is it just like
If need be, if I do go into a new style, then that's when we share the folder. But other than
yeah,
that, for the most part, we're sticking with the factions that
same
we have to
domain,
do.
yeah.
So yeah. So it's fun. I mean, I love fantasy music, and I mentioned Lord of the Rings earlier, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
it's I mean, what Howard Shore did, and it's amazing. Although I was watching the movie the other day. I'll watch it once a year,
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
trilogy or whatever, and I'll read the book maybe once every other year. And it's amazing how the book is so much better than the movies, even though I love the movies. But gosh, the book, I mean, they did what they could do. They could not
Right.
tell the story of the books. But I just couldn't believe how much I enjoyed the books actually better. So you folks at home, make sure you read. Appreciate you playing Midnight Suns and stuff like that, but don't forget about books.
Yeah, go read the origin, the source material. I think
Yeah,
that's,
the trilogy was something. It really really captured something. So
absolutely. So talk to me about I think we probably covered this probably in a past interview, but now that I think game composing has changed so much, with the technology getting better. It's a lot of, you can just send stems sometimes, and then the audio designers can rework how music comes in, timing, and like what triggers a certain battle music or something like that. So I'm curious, as a composer, is there any point when you're writing stuff and submitting stuff where you just like get really surprised in a good way when you see the final product where you maybe did not know how your music was being integrated? Is that such a thing now, that where you're just kind of submitting stuff over that, I need level 3, exciting music, or level 2 emotional music, and then you just submit that, and then you kind of see how it's working in the final game? Is that something that you love to see, or is that
yeah, absolutely. And I think Warhammer would be a great example of it, because we're told us to overwrite
Mhm.
in the cues. So um, make sure that we fill every little nook and cranny with the major food groups of strings, woodwinds, percussion, brass, choir, that sort of things like that. So we'll sometimes overwrite, and then they'll have all the stems, and they'll take it out, and then I'll listen to it in the game, and I'm like, this is brilliant. I mean, it
Yeah,
really feels amazing what they do with our stems. And the same thing with battles. Seeing how they'll, oh, this is, you can tell that something's going on, and this and that, and the percussion or the layers or something happens that triggers in there. So by writing thicker, I guess, than normal, it really gives them more options to integrate stuff, and just create a more interactive experience. And they've been very successful at it. Or one of my favorite examples too is I did the Simpsons games back a long time
yeah,
ago. And so what we did was we went up to Skywalker Ranch and recorded all the stems separately. And then, so if you're going along, you're playing Bart or Lisa or anybody, and you go in time, you're just going to hear the full mix. But if you start
yeah,
like making mistakes, they would like, all right, now you're just with the brass and the mallets, playing their
yeah,
little thing like that. And it worked brilliantly to like kind of diffuse the energy, and then
yeah.
basically tell the player like, all right, now you're going the right direction, go do that thing, this thing, or whatever like that. So I think that strategy, still, that was done whatever 15 years ago or something like that, and that was it still works today, and it's brilliant. And
I
they're going
think
to
it,
start
yeah,
doing more of that with spatial audio,
yeah.
and that it's like any way that we can um, help the user experience, and make it better. I think in games especially, they're trying to eke out every little trick that they can play in the book.
Yeah, I think it just adds more. I think maybe some people see it as like, oh, you're just relenting creative control, but it's also, I mean, you are creatively involved with this, and you're part of those discussions, and that then now your music gets to be almost composed real time, or like real time, to whatever was happening in the gameplay, which is rather than just having a looping background something. So it is, yeah, that interactivity with the player, and it feels like their decisions are being scored as it's happening, and I think it just adds a whole level, that wasn't there before,
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
20
yeah,
years
and
ago.
you learn to think in 8 bar, 16 bar phrases, and how can it be deconstructed? How can it be augmented, all these different
Right.
things of you're really thinking about different. I think at the beginning it took a little bit of playing around with, but now it kind of comes naturally. I think that if you're writing interactive music of the layers and the different stuff, and in XCOM we had it where we wrote the battle music in two ways, where it was good guys, bad guys, sort of aspect of it, and they would just like, depending on turns, they would kind of like blend, and it how it blended perfectly, and it really was like really cool when
Yeah.
it's their turn versus your turn, and things like that. So there's a few ways of doing it, and it's been great how they all figured out.
Yeah. So if you're, I mean, and what's something that you, as a composer, that you love about video game writing that you can't get in TV or film writing when you're writing to like a locked linear picture? What's something that you just, as a, creatively rewarding, that you can only get from video game writing?
Yeah, you would think I would have a great answer after doing so many games and TV shows and movies. So, gosh, what do I get? I mean, I guess I like the fact. There's more of a runway, so you can kind
Mm,
of play around with more sounds. I think
yeah.
that TV shows, you don't really have time to. I don't want to say you don't have time to think, but I was reading a philosopher the other day, and he said, if you think, it just gets in the way. And I'm like, this guy's a genius. And I'm like, how sort of thing like that. So, but I'm like, yes, I understand that thought
Yeah. Yeah.
if you overthink things in TV, you don't get your minutes in there enough to do it. So you really have to be instinctual when you're writing TV. So I think with film and games, I think they have a little bit more in common with each other than TV somewhat. Although TV, some TV music that is now coming out, I think it's brilliant. It's
Oh,
not
yeah. Yeah.
it's not like what it used to be in the past, where it would be looked up upon, with a little bit of a diversion, and it was, now it's on par with all of it. So I feel like it's all kind of getting, like, we're understanding that this episodic TV, that we're not churning out 25 episodes, and every, 5 days we have to have a new episode done. And I think people are aligning for schedules to be a little bit better. So,
Yeah.
so I think for games, what it allows me to do that you don't get, is just tell different stories, and help and have the people be a part of the story, rather than just be sitting back and taking in the entertainment that you have. And I think that's the brilliance of games, is if you really love a certain character. If you love, I happen to like playing Minecraft. It's a lot of fun. I like hearing the music. There's a calm aspect of it when you're
Yeah.
playing that, like 8-bit, a blocky sort of game, that you're just like mining stuff, and it's just like you can just zone out. And I there's a brilliance to it. So I think that being able to immerse yourself in that area of it, I think is what games gives me over those two.
Yeah. My brother loves. He always calls it like inventory management comfort games, like just like that,
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
that just like tickle his OCD, that he just loves to just
It's totally.
like
I mean, I know there's something wrong in my head, but I do music, so I know there's
yeah.
definitely something wrong in my head. So there's yeah, just having that, just sometimes just mindlessly, mining something gets you through. I mean, heck, I pulled out during the during COVID, I pulled out so many games to just get through. I started playing online board games that I never
Oh,
thought I
nice.
enjoyed board games at all. And I had friends play it, and they're like, "Oh, you should really play it, board games." I'm like, "Board games? I already play games." But I really went really back to the future in that stuff. And I find board games amazing, and it's a lot of fun
Yeah.
to play. And the people that are making those spaces, there's no music in those games, but I think it's brilliant. I think, I mean, Monopoly Online, any of that sort. I mean, not that board game, but like I'm
Right.
playing
Just, yeah, it's
strategic
a
board games.
well-known,
Like,
yeah, well-known. There's
yeah,
so many
I didn't think I was gonna. Yeah, yeah, I didn't think I was gonna like it. And the same thing, back when I first started doing XCOM, when it was a turn-based strategy game, I didn't think I was gonna like it. I'm like, turn-based? What is? I don't. That's like chess. I don't want to play like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
this chess sort of thing. It's brilliant. It's so much fun. And so, for us gamers, if you think that you like a certain thing or don't like a certain thing, I mean, give it a chance. I mean, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna love what these people are making, and take it for what it is. I mean, almost any game I can find, some enjoyment out of it, for sure.
Yeah, and I think Midnight Suns does a really good job at approaching that turn based, because it keeps you on your toes. You don't fall into patterns. You don't you have to do different techniques every time, and different elements come in and can change up, and you have to adjust your strategy. So it's definitely, if you're looking for kind of that up to keep you on your toes type guy gameplay, that is, every encounter is different. I think that they did a
Yeah.
really good job hitting that out of the park. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah. Well, as we wind down, I'm curious, is there anything coming up that you have on your plate that you're allowed to talk about? I know we don't want to break any NDAs or anything. Is there anything that
um, Nothing I can say right now other than
Okay.
the DLCs I know that are coming out for Midnight Suns and Warhammer. Still,
Yeah.
they're doing a whole host of things like that. So that's some more of that goodness. I think that's the thing I can talk about. The other things I shouldn't probably mention, but
Right.
there's always talks. There's a few
Always
films that
something.
are
Yeah.
yeah, there's a few films that are coming up that are shooting soon, and I'm we'll see.
Yeah.
Catch me in 6 months or a year, whenever these things get do it. But I hope to be working on great stuff, because I will say, I know everyone went through a tough time during the pandemic, and I was just so thankful that the projects that we just discussed and a couple
Yeah.
films that I was able to work on during that, because there's nothing better than putting your creative energy into something, rather than it was a trying time for everybody, and I
Yeah.
was just grateful that I was able to be using that energy in something, rather than just like, oh my God, what are we going to do during the pandemic, sort of thing like that. So it kept me busy. It was great to work on, so I'm just thankful to be part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I echo that sentiment too, because I'm in animation and we didn't shut
Yeah.
down. So we just had, yeah, it was stressful because we had to adapt and remote recording and all that. Like you just mentioned, struggling, and we had to
Yeah.
send recording materials to people's houses to record voices. So it was like a whole thing. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
tough working and it was stressful, but we were very fortunate that we still got to channel that through, and yeah, but and hopefully with these new projects, next time when I'm in LA this summer, we can do it in
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
and talk about it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Safe move, man. Safe move.
yeah,
Well, welcome back.
thank
The
you.
hot summers, the super hot, summers are gone for you.
I know I'm a desert guy. I don't miss humidity.
You like the dry,
I like
heat,
the dry
right?
heat. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Then
supposed to be 80
the
degrees
East
tomorrow
Coast.
in February here in Maryland. I don't understand what's going on. Today it's like 76. I don't, and then it's supposed to drop to 40 because of the winter storm front moving. I'm like, I just need and I know you guys are getting a good amount of rain, so
Well,
hopefully
we're getting nailed pretty good here. So
yeah.
you watch out. We're like the people are going to talk about California's falling off into the ocean in the next couple of days. So we'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see if we can survive it.
Keep it there for me until I get back. Well,
Yeah. We'll do the best we can.
well, Tim, thank you so much for chatting again. It's always great to talk to you, and I appreciate your time. And yeah, it's been a blast. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kai. I really appreciate it. Thank you.